we met Bunny's mom, Eunice, and Bunny's mom, Eunice, was working for the local county, I think as a clerk or something. And as it was required then, the county staff needed to file their returns online because it had gone 100% digital. And the option was, I think she was being charged something to the tune of 200 shillings to file a return, or she could have learned to do that on her own. And so we thought of, how about we teach Eunice's mom how to use internet and how to file returns? And with that, really show Eunice's mom the value of what we were trying to teach bunnies. So from typing to how to use the internet to how to code, Kids Comp Camp, we try to help out children, and especially children in underserved communities, to access basics computer training. But the big game, the big idea, is for them to be confident and informed about the emerging opportunities around tech. So that is like the mission of our program. How can we give kids in underserved communities sort of an equal playing ground for them to compete, not just with their peers in their village, but with the bigger digital village, which is becoming flat by the day. And so, like I mentioned, we started off sometime in 2014. It's almost like how many years now? 6-7 years down the line. This is some of the work that we've been able to do across East Africa, and of course, much more can be done. So the model, how do we operate? Step number one, we reach out to communities where exposure to tech is very minimal, and that is trying to say like all rural communities fit to that criteria. So on paper, we usually say for every class we are trying to reach out to, at least 7 or more kids. This needs to be like their first time using computers. And once we get such communities, we try to partner with local institutions, which mainly have been the schools. Also, of course, we've worked with community centers. We've also worked with churches, and so we work with local communities so that we can work with them hand in hand. And then, of course, over time, we've just realized for us to sustain that impact, we focus not just on the kids alone, but on partners around those kids. And that is essentially parents and teachers. And as I'm going to mention in a few slides, young people also in that community. So again, like our vision again has been growing from just kids to asking ourselves, how can we really make that 360 impact in that particular village, from empowering the child, but also creating a really effective support system around that child. And that means the parent is informed, the teacher is informed, the older brothers and sisters, they're also informed and equipped to be a support system around the kids. These are some of the gaps that we've been growing and trying to ask ourselves is how can we fit into that. And one of the gaps that we've been seeing, especially the last 3 years, is just the number of, for lack of a better word, idleness when young people finish high school. Every year, as over like 700,000 young people finish high school. The transition rate between high school and college is it's less than 50%. So every single year, we have like almost 400,000 people who are somewhere in a village. And we've been trying to ask ourselves is how can we convert that idle time to be something useful within their communities, but even more importantly for us, to support kids in those communities. So we we sort of diversified because of two reasons. Of course, the initial program for running the kids was purely 100% funded by partners and well-wishers. So we would do events to raise support for those kids, would write grants to raise money to support the program. But then clearly that is not very sustainable. So we thought about, how about if we can develop another program and try to reach out to young people, and I'm talking about ex-candidates, guys who've just finished high school, give them a skill they can become computer literate for themselves, and do something with themselves. And so we sort of created a program called Computer Mashinani, which was like, hey, this is a program not just for kids, but for adults in those communities that we were working with. So, and it also proved that Kids Comp Camp was a tongue twister. So Computer Mashinani was more tongue friendly for especially older people. And so Computer Mashinani, we used to charge, like, I think it was like 3,000 shillings and run for 8 weeks. And again, we're just trying to give basics of computers to teachers, to parents, and to the to guys who just finished high school. Yes, so again, the model was, again, we used a lot of volunteers, especially from campus students or just guys who finished university. And we would give them an experience to go and work in another community and be able to share their skills with that. And would ask them to come with their laptops, and sort of that would be the base on which we would sort out our infrastructure challenge of getting devices down to the villages that we were working with. Of course, with time, we've been able to get a few more devices, but that was just to begin the conversation around that. Talking of diversification and sustainability model, so Computer Mashinani was one of our sustainability model, which we are still working on. But the screen that you are seeing right now, it was like our adaptation to COVID, because when COVID happened, we could not do anything. So we realized, oh, okay, maybe there are many kids who are at home, and I'm talking now about kids in urban areas, because again, kids that we were trying to reach out to, they did not have a device, they did not have a connection. So we were, essentially excluded from reaching out to them. So we diversified to actually started offering like Zoom coding classes, and would enroll kids, especially around Nairobi, teach them sort of, again, just on the basics of tech, but this time around focusing on coding to keep them busy while at home. And we were also charging just a minimum amount just to keep our program afloat. So this is like sort of like a second idea of how we can generate a bit of resources internally, so that we make the bigger picture of reaching out to that child in Mandera or that child in Tana River in a more self-sufficient and self-sustainable way. Like I mentioned before, our program remains to be essentially not for profit. So we are trying to balance between those two things. How can we still continue fundraising, but at the same time, with the skills and experiences that we're getting over time, maybe convert that to become a product which can be exchanged for a certain value, and the essence of that value would be to create a sense of sustainability. So we do run a few fundraising activities to complement all these other activities. And one of our long projects has been a campaign called Skip a Lunch, Donate a Lunchbox. So a lunchbox is food for one child for one camp at only 200 shillings to $2. And every year we try to ask like 1,000 of our friends if they can consider to partner with us. And really that goes out to fund our biggest budget line, which apparently is food. So because we realize that kids would walk up to 5 kilometers to come to the camp. And that if that kid is not well fed or energetic, then I think there wouldn't be much learning. So we want to make our camps to be food, fun, and computers. And that's why we try to ask a few of our friends, or as many as our friends as they can, if they can consider partnering with us in a small yet critical way. You can check out how you can participate that in our website, kidscomcam.com. And any help will be much appreciated. Those are our contacts in case you may want to reach out to us, give us ideas, and really try to think about those kids growing up in rural areas. How can they catch up with the current digital space? How can they participate? And going back to the big question that I began with, what does it mean to be techie and young in Kenya today? And just seeing the events of this week, just around political space, it really awakened my thoughts around. I know many a time when we think about digital literacy, ed tech, we are thinking mostly around the political economy of it. Like, are guys getting jobs, or are we bringing in the numbers? But I felt like it's also important for us to really think about why do we want to educate these kids? Why do we want to educate ourselves? And I thought, like, first and foremost, we should think about ourselves. We should think about, for example, when we think about democracy in our country, how many people know the value of data? How many people see it was called Huduma number? How Huduma number can be captured, can be processed, can be used or abused in some times. How many people have that information and that perception? Because that, I think, is very important for who we are as a country and as a people. So, and part of our mission, like I said before, as we think about 70% of young people, 70% of us Africans begin our lives in a rural area. That is huge, right? Any information which can be channeled and reach out to those people, any knowledge, that is really useful thing for us to think about. And so Kids Camp is our very small contribution to ensure that this generation is enlightened on value of data, on value of technology, and how they can use that to change their communities and to change our country as a whole. So that is my presentation for today. I would like to spend most of the time, of course, getting questions and getting to hear about also your ideas, given that you're also in this tech space, and I'm so sure you do have valuable ideas which we can also learn from. Asanteni sana.
Wow, nice. This is so interesting. Actually, Caleb, something I didn't know, like it was going this way, but it almost got me emotional because I remember back at Shags, while trying to finish up school, I had to drop because of not having enough food, so I had to go and look for to fend for myself. So this really relates with me, and it's actually awesome what you're doing, and continue with the great work. So without much further ado, I would like us to move into the QA session. So if you have any question for Caleb, or you would like to contribute to anything, feel free. The floor is yours.
I think there's a question in the chat. I sent.
There's a question. Let me read out. What have been your greatest source of friction with the initiative? Is the government supportive?
Good question. I wanted to include that slide about lessons from government laptop project, but then I felt like, I'm not sure if I want to talk about that today, but now that you've asked, so the thing is, we've thought about what kind of partnerships we may want to form with the government, and especially with just the thought of the laptop project. But we've always felt that the goals and objective of the government at this particular point, they don't align with us. We are more focused on impact on a very village level, if we may say, impact. And sort of we feel like government projects, they are big scale, and I don't think they are more quantity. And we feel like at this particular point, for us, we are more quality, is partnering with old boys from rural villages and trying to do something, and maybe with time, hand over that to their community. And so on that sense, we didn't feel we were a very good fit for that government project. But also, and this is information out there, the approach of government towards the laptop project as was clearly not well thought out end to end. And I've been to around like 100 schools. And I think out of the 100 schools that I've been in the last 2 years, I've only seen one school where those devices are being used. And the reason for that is like, hey, teachers don't know how to use these devices. But more importantly, teachers have a perception towards these devices. It sort of looks like it's enemy to them. It's more work to them. No one took time to go and sit with teachers and explain them the big picture around how these devices can actually be used to make their work easier. There was just a lack of community ownership. And so those are some of the things that we feel like being sort of like a small organization, we have the time to go and connect with communities for who they are. We don't go in there and prescribe that you have to take our project. Is we try to go and sit down with them and try to ask what are the gaps that we can use technology to fill with that. And so those have been our interactions and lessons with communities and perception towards what partnership with the government would look like. But of course, we know we are not naive to the fact that we need the government for us to even make our project scalable. And the government plays a very significant position in how technology is devolved or success of any project. But we also feel like maybe we may need to grow a bit more before we can start thinking about partnering with the government. And when I say the government is currently as it is with an idea of trying to give laptops to all kids in all schools, we think that can be more nuanced.
Nice. So we have another question from Shiko Carol. She's asking, have you worked with existing tech communities in Kenya so far?
Tech communities, what do you mean by tech communities? Do you mean the corporate? Do you mean meetups? Do you mean friends of tech?
Let me clarify.
Yes.
Okay. So for example, there's tech communities like JavaScript communities, other crypto communities, like there are existing tech communities either for software engineering in different stacks or like for women in tech or cybersecurity. So have you like maybe had programs where you've partnered with them for one or two things, maybe in the process of trying to sell the importance of teaching tech to to people in the deep rural areas?
Okay. Yes. That's a good question. It's making me actually think a few more things. But let me respond to your question. Yes, we worked with JQuad JLAG to run a program that we used to call it. Was it called We Speak Code? We were partnering with Microsoft as well on that project. And so definitely our doors are open. We would love to see how we can work with more. But more importantly, I think also just try to think how we worked with JLAG. It was like attraction to a member of JLAG attended one of our camps, and then he said like, I know guys who meet on Wednesdays. Can we share with this idea, and then can they be able to plug in? So it was sort of like a continued conversation, and I do believe, especially now attending calls like I'm attending right now, we can also continue this conversation to many more tech communities, and we'll be open to that.
Okay, nice. So I think we have one more question from Harry. He says, "Love the initiative. Keep up the work. Would you consider teaching kids how to navigate the digital information, researching the appropriate links and resources?"
Please come again. I didn't get that question.
The question is, would you consider teaching kids how to navigate the digital information, researching the appropriate links, resources?
Is that like how to use the internet?
Yeah, I think that's the question.
Yeah. So let me just try to say what we teach. So our content creation is created around 3 pillars. Pillar number 1 is get started. Like I said, 90% of our kids that we teach, this is their first time to use a computer. So we try to give them a good fast digital experience with the basics. And we build confidence around any digital space and any digital device. So that is get started. Then the next module is what we call get productive. Now that they know how to open a computer, they know how to use a mouse. These things we take them for granted, but there's a whole world there which is disconnected from them. So we teach them on what we call get productive. How can they start doing like school assignments? How can they start searching information online? And I think now I'm responding to that question. How can they create utilities with knowing how to use internet, for example? And then the last module is what we call get creative, and that is where now we introduce the whole concept around programming and coding. So get started, get productive, get creative. But then, of course, I'm also a student of data and society, and I do know that the internet has both opportunities and risks. And we've started actually to when we teach about internet, to also include internet safety for both the kids and the parents, on how they can really make the most useful out of the internet and avoid the harms which could come online. And so yes, we teach them how to use the internet, but also responsibly and safely. And if you may allow me, maybe I can just say a side note on that. I think most of us, we are around in our 20s, we're almost getting our kids, or we have our nephews. And the whole conversation about safety online, it's becoming a mainstream conversation, which is good. One of my professors right now has been working on just the conceptualization of what does internet safety mean. And when I was talking to them the other day, they were just helping me to learn, like, hey, when you talk about safety, many a time we're only talking about protect. Many a time we're just talking about limit. Many a time we're only talking about restrict, right? But also, safety means resilience. Sometimes when kids go online, they are not just there to be guided step by step. They also need to be given room for them to explore, for them to learn to be independent thinkers, right? For them to learn to navigate on their own. Remember, they are human beings, they have agency, and they have to learn how to do that. And more importantly, in their time rather, because they are digital by default. Maybe I learned resilience through riding a bike and I fell a few times. Or maybe I learned resilience through running in the forest. Their time, the way to run in the forest is through, for example, playing Minecraft or playing some games. So we need to ask ourselves as older brothers and sisters or young parents, how do we balance between protecting our kids, but at the same time giving them autonomy for them to explore and learn how to be themselves in their new normal, which is very digital and which is very identified. Sorry, that was a detour, but I think it's also important to be talked about the balance between risks and opportunities, and that is what the internet brings to us. And so, as we teach our kids, we also need to be aware of those two dynamics.
As we have a couple of questions left from Devish. So, if you had the full backing of the government, how would you scale this?
Excellent. Am I talking to a government official? Can we send the check right now? Anyway, that will be pitch of success. I would do that project and retire. So if I had full backing of the government, and that means money is not an issue. I would begin with teacher training. And not just skills for teachers. I would begin with perception, changing a mindset of teachers, rural teachers particularly, when it comes to tech. I would sell tech not as a skill, but tech as an enabler, right? I would heavily involve also parents and community opinion leaders, just to show them tech is like a pen. You can use a pen to draw, or also you can use a pen to sign that check. It just depends on the context and the usefulness. And of course, I would try to also create focus on rural kids, because again, I've spent most of my time there. And I feel like rural kids have different contexts which need to be factored in. For example, I've just talked about access to education, access to food being like a very fundamental priority to learning, right? I would think not just about devices, but I would think about food for certain parts of the country where we know that food is very basic. Yes, a while back ago, I had the opportunity to give a TEDx talk, and I was trying to talk about the priorities that we have for kids in rural communities, and of course, the question at the point of discussion at that particular point was, when we think about kids in rural and underserved communities, do we think of giving them food or do we think of giving them devices? And my argument at that particular point was like, I really don't think that it's one or the other. I think what is most important is the context at that particular point. All kids, I do believe, they have equal abilities. And so those abilities need to be nurtured, even though they are going through different, they are growing in different environments, or they could be, battling or struggling with different contexts. So reach out to teachers as a priority, but also reach out to kids with specific context in mind. That would be my long and short answer to that.
Oh, nice. We have another question. How has the COVID pandemic impacted the programs?
Chambilecho waenga. I want to believe that most of us, we are Kenyans. COVID imetufanya ile kitu bana. COVID was just like, yeah, we had to stop for quite a while, especially after the first wave, because we couldn't reach out to parents, we could reach out to the kids. But then what we started doing is we realized that actually most teachers have at least a WhatsApp. They can reach out to WhatsApp. So we would facilitate just among our networks how we can push like small content to teachers, and then encourage the teachers to push that to students. But it was less than ideal, but then we felt like maybe something is better than nothing. But then, like I mentioned also in the presentation, COVID also taught us maybe we could diversify to offering using, for example, Zoom to teach kids and kids who can access that facility, mostly in urban areas, and that is what we've been trying to do to cope up with, with COVID. But of course, many points of learning which we are taking them day by day. And of course, COVID also, like, I think it has also opened up conversation around, we are seeing more parents ask us about internet safety. We are seeing more parents question privacy of their kids' content. And that for us it's both an opportunity to expand our scope of training, but also be more meaningful in terms of the communities that we live in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think there was some glitch there. Sorry. So we have this question from developerISH. How do you find funding, and do you require ongoing support, and how can individuals in the developerISH community here learn that?
Yes, like I said, we started off as a purely not for profit. Like we'll do events, concerts, and invite our friends to come over, and whatever resources we get, that is what would use. We've continued to write grants. Maybe a friend of a friend knows that their friend is, their company is doing CSR. We've partnered with a couple of organizations, especially when they're doing their CSR. And so sort of that has been like the main thing that we've been doing. But then of course, with COVID, and even like before, a year or two before COVID, we realized we may also need to start thinking about some internal income generating activities. And that is when we started thinking about teaching rural youth on computer skills. Because what we realized, by the way, it was there's a very big market when it comes to what they call the packages economy. Now, let me explain the packages economy. The packages economy is what students do when they finish high school before they join college, and they are taught on some basics of computers. Apparently, it's a multi-million economy if you do the math of how many people go through that process. But then we felt like whatever is being taught there is really absolute, or it is 19,000. So we thought like we could offer a better package, and also charge a few amount. But then with that, we get two things. We get a bit of money to sustain the program, but also in the long run, we started recruiting and training local volunteers, right? Instead of me going with my JQuad guys to Mandera, I can run a training for young people there for maybe 2 or 3 months. And maybe out of that training, I can get 1 or 2 people who are really good and use that to transfer skills in their very own community. And of course, that training, we saw interest among teachers because the government was giving them devices, and we opened it up. So things did not go as fast as we thought, and of course, no sooner than we began than COVID kicked in. So those are some of the things that we are looking forward to resume when this COVID madness stops, and we hope to be able to scale with that thought. Like I mentioned when I was winding up my presentation, every year we are always looking. For myself, I try to reach out to 1,000 friends and ask them to give 200 shillings for lunch box. And lunch box is food for one child for one camp at only 200 shillings. Roabetu, so skip a lunch today and donate a lunch box to Kids Comp Camp. And the details you can find that on the kidscompcamp.com.
All right. So we have, I think this is the last question, but it has a follow-up. So is there more access to mobile phones than computers in those areas? Would The follow will be would USSD approach for a lesson be useful for sustainability?
Excellent question. So, COVID actually taught us that WhatsApp penetration is perhaps way more than we thought. More teachers could access WhatsApp than we had thought. And so, yes, mobile penetration is way high, and that is something exciting. Perhaps it should actually challenge us to start thinking about how we deliver our content in the coming days. In terms of USSD, I know Enes has been on that space for quite a while. And I'm not sure. We tried doing something small. It didn't work so well because it needed to have, in terms of like the content delivery, first of all, there's a number of characters you can offer. And second, second of all is the trainer learner gap was very, very minimal. And so we realized when I post like 5 questions through USSD, kids would get stuck maybe at 2 or 3. And when kids get stuck, because again, this is like their first time to use devices, they just give up. So it can work, but we think maybe we need to explore a wider context of when the kid is answering those questions through USD or through SMS, how can they still be able to get assistance, timely and present assistance, so that they don't give up? Because maybe they're a bit afraid, they're not sure of how to try. How can they have somebody to encourage them, or some information which is it's just there to hold them in such a timely and present manner? So good thoughts around USSD, SMS, but we've not found a sweet spot which we think it's impactful and it can scale easily.
I think that was the last question. In case you have more questions, I think you can go and you can still ask here. And yeah. Okay, so I think we don't have any more questions. I think we've come to the end of the workshop, and I'd like to ask you guys to maybe engage with us via the survey. I've shared the link on the chats. Feel free to let us know what you think about the workshop. And again, thank you very much for making time to join us. And thank you, Caleb, for the presentation.
Asanteni sana, thank you so much for the invite. I hope that it was useful in a very small way, and I look forward to the coming days and try to see what we can do together in one way or the other.
Thank you, Caleb.
Caleb, did you? I think you forgot to share the M-Pesa pay bill number, probably.
Okay, yeah. Let me get my slide. Oh yeah, that's a slide. The M-Pesa till number is 691470. So that is a 691470, and the confirmation text should be from kids ComCamp. Any lunchbox would be much appreciated, and of course, more information you can get it on kidscomcamp.com.
Okay, we've come to the end of the workshop. Again, thank you very much, guys. Bye bye, and have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.